This, what a handsome guy. John Carpay, ladies and gentlemen.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Brad. Most of all, my thanks to each and every one of you for exercising your courage by being here today and exercising your charter freedom of expression, your charter freedom of association, your charter freedom of peaceful assembly. These are our God-given freedoms. They do not come from Jason Kenney. They do not come from Dina Hinshaw. They do not come from the Calgary Police. These are God-given freedoms, and we are proudly exercising them today as Canadians. I applaud your courage because, you know, there's been statements issued by the police that they're going to issue tickets. And I listened carefully, and we want to be friends with the police. I agree with what Brad said. The police should be protecting our rights and freedoms. And the chief of police, he said a few things. Two of them I found interesting. One, he said that this was just temporary limits on our constitutional freedoms. Temporary. We're into our ninth month of fear-mongering, our ninth month of people dying because they didn't get their cancer diagnosis on time. We're into our ninth month of elevated rates of suicide and alcoholism and drug overdoses, millions of people thrown into unemployment. These are not temporary. If these were temporary restrictions, I wouldn't be here today, and I don't think you would be either. If it was just 2 weeks to flatten the curve, you know, we weren't holding the rallies back in March and April. That would have been okay. I'd support it 2 weeks to flatten the curve. But we're into our ninth month. So I'm sorry to disagree with the chief of police, but these are not temporary restrictions. The other interesting comment that was made was that the place to fight this is in the courts, not on Stephen Avenue, not at Olympic Plaza. And I'm sorry, I'm going to have to disagree. The answer is both. The answer is both. But court actions, from the time you file the court action until you get a ruling, it's 2 years if you're lucky, probably 3 years, and quite often 4 or 5 years. And I hope that the chief of police and Jason Kenney and Dina Hinshaw will understand that we're not going to give up our charter rights and freedoms for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. I had the honor and the privilege some years ago to defend the free expression rights of some very courageous students at the University of Calgary, and the university was threatening to expel them if they continued with their peaceful pro-life advocacy on campus. The university found them guilty of non-academic misconduct, so we took the university to court, and 3 years later we got a court ruling saying that the university was wrong, so we beat the University of Calgary. But from the time of filing that court action until the day that we got the ruling, it took 3 years. And do you know what the students did during those 3 years? They kept on with their advocacy on campus. We've released a report the Justice Centre has. It's called Flying Blind. It's on our website, www.jccf.ca. We released this on Thursday. Hundreds of hours of work from our legal team and our researchers with input from medical doctors went into this report. So I encourage you to look it up. Flying Blind, subtitle, Government's Hasty Decisions to Lock Down Canadians While Damaging the Economy and Public Health. Now we rely in this report, we use government data, government statistics. That's what we're relying on, and we've got far more footnotes in this than you'll see in any of the modeling coming out of Alberta Health Services. So everything is referenced and footnoted, and it goes back to the government data. Now we've been told since March when Jason Kenney and Dina Hinshaw released their modeling saying that as many as 32,000 Albertans would die of COVID-19, even with lockdown measures in place, they said that 32,000 Albertans could die. Nonsense. Fear-mongering. Jason Kenney has publicly compared COVID-19 to the Spanish flu. Does Jason Kenney know anything about the Spanish flu? Does he know that it killed between 20 and 50 million people? Does he know that it killed millions of young, healthy adults in their 20s, 30s, and 40s? To compare COVID to the Spanish flu is irresponsible fear-mongering. And it's the same fear-mongering we're hearing today. So I gotta ask you a question. With this unusually deadly killer on the loose, the way the politicians want us to believe, do you think that in the first 8 months of 2020, from January to August of 2020, do you think that with an unusually deadly killer on the loose, do you think that we would have had more Canadians dying or fewer Canadians dying? More. You'd think more. The government's own data tells us that in the first 8 months of 2020, fewer Canadians died than in the previous year. That's not my opinion, that's the government's data. So how do you reconcile that with the fear-mongering about an unusually deadly killer when we have fewer Canadians dying in 2020 than what we did last year? How do you reconcile that? Gets more interesting. Gets more interesting. In the first 8 months of 2020, the government data tells us there are fewer people dying of cancer, fewer people dying of heart diseases, fewer people dying of stroke, fewer people dying of lung diseases, fewer people dying of pneumonia, and fewer people dying of influenza. In total, 10,295 fewer deaths from those 6 illnesses in the first 8 months of this year. Combined with, at that time, 8,795 COVID deaths. Every death is tragic. It doesn't matter whether it's from COVID or cancer or lung disease or heart disease. Every death is tragic. But what the government's own data is telling us is that we had 10,295 fewer Canadians die from these cancer and lung diseases and so on, at the same time that we had just shy of 9,000 people die of COVID. So, not my opinion, it's the government's data. The other harms of the lockdowns that this report delves into are the cancelled surgeries. Thanks to the lockdowns, 200,000 Canadians had their medically necessary and in many cases life-saving surgeries cancelled. Shame. Shame. That 200,000 doesn't even include the number of people that ordinarily would have had a surgery scheduled and did not get a surgery scheduled. On top of the 200,000 cancelled surgeries, we have 500,000 Canadians did not get their MRIs and CT scans in a timely fashion. 500,000. Scientists in the United Kingdom estimate that the delays in cancer diagnosis and delays in cancer treatment in the United Kingdom will kill as many as 35,000 British citizens. And when you transfer those same numbers to Canada, we're looking at as many as 18,000 Canadians dying unnecessarily from cancer. This is what the governments will have to answer for in court. We've got increases in suicide because of unemployment and from unemployment alone, we have at least an increase of at least 680 more people that have killed themselves because of rising unemployment. That does not include the likely even larger number of people that are killing themselves because the government is forcing and imposing social isolation, taking people away from their friends, their family, taking people away from their churches, their 12-step programs, their sports leagues, their bowling, their hockey, their soccer, connecting with friends at a restaurant or at a pub. Don't kid yourself, suicides are going up because of the lockdowns. Drug overdoses on the rise. In British Columbia, 5 times as many people have died of drug overdoses compared to COVID. In Alberta, more people have died of drug overdoses than COVID. Every death is sad. Every COVID death is sad. Every drug overdose is sad. But the politicians have a duty under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms to actually take a hard look at the harm. So where are the models? Jason Kenney and Dina Hinshaw came up with fear-mongering, wildly false, erroneous, exaggerated models in April, telling us that 32,000 Albertans would die of COVID, even with lockdown measures in place. Do you think that Jason Kenney and Dina Hinshaw have done any modeling on the number of deaths from canceled surgeries? Do you think they've done any modeling on deaths from suicide caused by lockdowns? Do you think they've done any modeling on deaths from drug overdoses? No modeling. No modeling for all of those things. So the government under the charter, the onus is on the government to show that their measures are doing more good than harm. Well, I have yet to see the evidence, because speculation is not evidence. You can assert that the lockdowns have saved lots of lives, but if you don't have any science to back it up, and they don't, you're just operating in the realm of speculation. So the time has come, and I'm pleased to announce, if you didn't see the news release this morning, that the Justice Centre has filed a statement of claim against the Alberta government. And this is not the first. This is not the first, because before Christmas, we'll be suing British Columbia. We'll be suing Saskatchewan. We'll be suing Manitoba. And we'll be suing Ontario. And for the first time in 9 months, the politicians are actually going to be required to answer some questions. I want to ask for your help for this. We're in the process right now as I speak. Our litigation manager is interviewing people. We need to hire more lawyers. And our lawyers are paid entirely by the voluntary donations that the Justice Centre receives from Canadians. So if you're in the crowd today, and if you support these court actions, if you want to see them succeed, we can't do it. We've got a very, very strong legal team. We already have 7 staff lawyers, but these are not our only cases. We're fighting lots of tickets. And if you get a ticket, don't pay, plead not guilty, get in touch with the Justice Centre. We're going to do our best to represent as many people as possible in defense of their charter freedoms. Do not stop exercising your charter freedoms while court actions are in process, okay? Because we cannot give up our rights and freedoms for 2, 3, 4, 5 years waiting for a court ruling, and we're not going to. So if you want to see these court actions succeed, donate to the Justice Centre, www.jccf.ca. Go to our website, sign up for our newsletter. No amount is too small. Whether it's $1,000, $500, $200, $100, $50, $25, $10, no amount is too small. Go to our website and donate so we can pay for these extra lawyers, so that we can sue and hold to account these politicians that are violating our charter freedoms. In closing, I got 2 thoughts. One is, always remember, it is better to die standing than to live on your knees. And the last thing to remember is that quitters never win, and winners never quit. Thank you.